Hello?
Hello, is this Jody Miller?
Yes, Mr. Haskins.
Yes, hello.
Nice to speak with you.
Good to speak to you. We wanted to get the chance to discuss the upcoming mediation with you. So I have my client Tom Chu here with me, and this, as we discussed, this will give us a chance to go over what's going to happen.
Great. Yes, I'm glad that we have the opportunity to talk before the session. I'd like to find out more about the situation and also explain a little bit about how mediation works here, how that might be different than other mediation experiences.
Okay, very good.
So can you tell me a little bit about the situation? I know it's a construction dispute with the daycare center, but maybe you can tell me from your point of view what's been happening.
Well, this actually goes back quite a number of years. Tom was responsible for the building of the daycare center this was around 2001, 2002. And at the time that it was built, there was a relatively minor initial problem with the rubber roof layering where there was a leak. Tom came back in and at his own expense actually repaired that. So that was fixed to everyone's satisfaction. That was that was back in 2002 that you actually got that done. So everything was fine from everyone's perspective at that point. Since then, we've run into problems of greater significance, to say the least, I guess it goes back to around 2007. At that point, Tom noticed as he was going by that they brought in a contractor to install a very large air conditioning unit on the roof of the building. Now, this is a flat-roofed building. Apparently they ran into problems thereafter. To our knowledge at this point, there ended up being a leakage issue with regard to where they had installed this unit, which created problems within the facility. My understanding is that there apparently was an incident where water was leaking, and there was a child that from what we heard secondhand here, may have been injured. And since then, there has been, unfortunately, not really communication back and forth, but, there's been communication to the extent that a lawsuit has been started against my client, Mr. Chu, seeking $1 million. There, at this point, has been, actually comments made out in the community by some of the principals over at the daycare center, which certainly seems to be at the very least harmful to his reputation, and in our view, certainly uncalled for and unwarranted. So we have this $1 million lawsuit. We have this which I hate to typify it as slander, but certainly we have things going on in the community which should not be going on as far as harm to his reputation. And we have a circumstance here where his business is being damaged because he depends on his reputation, he depends on his contacts. And certainly the people that he worked with the daycare center are people, this is not a huge community, people who he still has interaction with as far as business relationships, maybe one removed or two removed or whatever, but there's still, it's a network in the community. And, this is looking to be something that could really harm him down the line as far as his business potential.
So you said a number of things, Mr. Haskins, and the most recent thing, it sounds like it's critical to your client, two things. One is his reputation in the community. It's a small community. He built this daycare center, and some things are being said. You said that they might even be considered slanderous, although you didn't want to use that word, that it's really affecting his reputation. And in addition to that, there is this $1 million lawsuit that's been filed against him for, it sounds like you're saying that he's not responsible for the leaking air conditioning unit that was put in by another contractor at some later date. When Mr. Chu initially built the building, everybody seemed very happy. That was around 2001, 2002. Then there was some leaking in the roof. He went back, he fixed that, everything was fine. It wasn't until this air conditioning unit was put in by another company that this other problem happened, and your client, and they're suing your client for a child falling and damage to the building.
Correct. Basically, as you said, it does boil down to the two predominant issues. One, his reputation, damage to that, and two, $1 million, which certainly is not inconsequential to any of us, even in this day of inflation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, so clearly his reputation is at stake, and the $1 million lawsuit. Both of those things are what you would like to address in the mediation session.
Right. Yeah. Certainly. Our view, and correct me if I'm wrong, Tom, but our view here is that we would like to dispose of this quickly. Long drawn out court process is not going to assist. Certainly, it's not going to assist Tom's reputation here. Mm-hmm. Having that out in the community and publicized is certainly something that we're not looking for. So that would certainly make sense. By the same token, too, if we can eliminate the expense involved with a lengthy litigation process, because we can spend, as we've discussed, we can spend 2 years here in the process of doing depositions, discovery of documents, and this is going to end up being a significant drain on everyone's resources. Mm-hmm. So we're looking to get some resolution here, and we're looking to get some resolution that is quicker and less cost intensive than if we were to go through a traditional litigation process. Is that?
So you're really talking about having this situation addressed as soon as possible, resolved as soon as possible, because as time goes on, it's affecting Mr. Chu's reputation, and that's certainly not something that you want to see fester or continue for any length of time. And then there is the cost and time associated with what litigation will take. You've discussed with him it could take up to 2 years to resolve something like this, and really would like to get this resolved much sooner at less cost and less time to everyone involved.
Exactly. Certainly, efficiency here, efficiency of the process, and that's hopefully what we're looking for, a process that's more efficient, mm-hmm. that involves less as far as both time and cost, and brings this around to what we hope would be the appropriate resolution, because I think that seems pretty clear to us at this point what that would be.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so really wanting to use the mediation process to efficiently resolve the entire matter, both the $1 million lawsuit as well as Mr. Chu's reputation is really the crux of this, the key for both of you at this point.
Exactly. His business is built on his reputation, mm-hmm. and if we're going to engage in a process that's going to result in the destruction of his reputation, the damage there really makes the $1 million look inconsequential by comparison, mm-hmm. because mm-hmm. this is his life and this is his future. Okay.
So maybe I can talk with you now about how the mediation process works here with us. I know that you've probably been in many mediations in the course of your representing clients. And I just want to talk a little bit about how my role and how the mediation process works here with our organization.
Okay. Yeah, I'd like to hear about how the process works there. As I said, Tom is here with me, so he and I can convey some of this to him so that he understands where we're going.
Okay, great. So my role is to facilitate a discussion or conversation between you, your client, the other parties, to the degree with which you and your client wish to do that. It's up to you as to how, whether or not your client's going to talk during the mediation. But my role is to facilitate any conversation that it does happen at the session. Okay. And I do that in a way that allows for communication, meaning it's not such a structured process, which may be different than what you've experienced in other mediations, but it's a process that's really focused on helping people say what they need to say, whatever that is. I'm not going to make those decisions for you or your client. It's a process that encourages discussion, and my role is to facilitate that discussion and being impartial, of course. But the key thing is that I'm not going to be making decisions for you about what it is that you choose to speak about, when you choose to speak about that, or how the process is going to go. Okay. It's really designed to help people get clear, understand the perspective of the other whenever they're able to, and really fosters decision making by the parties. So there could be anything from an outcome to a full settlement to decisions where people need to get more information or need to take some time. So there's a full range of possible outcomes that can happen as a result of the process. Okay. But it's important to know that I will be facilitating this discussion in a way that is very open and where you and the other parties are deciding what to talk about, when to talk about those things, and how you want to talk about them, versus me structuring the session in a way that lets you know we're going to move into this phase, that phase, etc. So it is different in that way, and I just wanted you to be aware of that, to check in and make sure that that is the process that you're looking to engage with.
Okay. Well, you've said a number of things here, and some of these I want to convey to Tom too, with regard to that. Essentially they're going to facilitate a discussion between us and the other side. Now, as far as how that discussion goes, and what you're saying is somewhat different from the mediation process as I've experienced it before, because you were talking about how you're not going to be dictating a resolution or determination. Now, the concern I have about that, and I have been doing this for a number of years at this point, or a number of decades actually at this stage, and have participated in quite a few mediations. But the mediations that I've been in have been directed towards the goal of hammering out a solution. I guess it possibly could be described as possibly a more directive process than what you're talking about. That being said, I know Tom is interested in a resolution here, and being done with this process. So there is the question of that aspect being important.
Right.
So I guess the question here is whether perhaps we could do something more in that fashion, or something more akin to what certainly I'm used to.
So it sounds, you're saying that you're really focused on getting to a settlement. That's what your client's looking for, and right. Wondering whether or not I could I could mediate in a different way to facilitate that.
Yeah, I think that is essentially it, because certainly reaching an end of this is something that we're looking to accomplish here. We need to be there.
So as does happen very often, my role is to facilitate whatever it is that the parties' goals are. And so if your goal is to reach a resolution and you are discussing those things or getting to that, I'm going to facilitate that process as well. So It's very common that people do reach decisions that are settlements. But that's not my primary goal. My goal is to support the conversation that you all are having. And if that's what you're talking about, that's what I'm going to facilitate. Okay.
So if we're looking to move towards a resolution, your facilitation will help us move in that direction.
Yes, it will support that conversation. And if you're moving in that direction, it'll support whatever that direction or any other direction that you take.
Okay, well, that sounds reasonable in that regard. The other aspect, I know you brought up the question of, or raised the issue as far as speaking at the mediation.
Yes.
Now, I know Tom and I had some discussion here, and he's brought me in to essentially deal with this issue and deal with this litigation. And my understanding was that I think he's comfortable and desirous of me taking the lead here. That this is going to be, I'm the one who has the experience as far as these type of interactions, and that I should be the one who's at the fore here in carrying out this discussion. Is that
Absolutely. That's why you're doing what you do. If you want a new roof, I can do that for you.
okay? All right. Well, I think Tom and I are in agreement on that approach to things. Now, is that amenable, or is that something that's appropriate to what we're doing as you understand it?
Yes, absolutely. The decisions between attorneys and their clients about how they're going to participate in the mediation is theirs alone. And my role is to facilitate, again, that conversation in any way that you've chosen to have it. So what I hear you saying is that you primarily will be the speaker, and Tom will be part of the mediation. He'll be present at the mediation, but you will be the lead and having those discussions with the other side.
Right. Well, realistically, from our perspective, while we're dealing with other people, we're dealing with the interrelationship, most particularly with what's gone on in the community and what's been said by certain people from the daycare center with regard to Tom. We're still dealing with legal issues, and that is the crux of this matter, and certainly that is where my expertise comes to play here, and that's why Tom brought me in the first instance.
So you'll be speaking, because primarily these are legal issues that he's hired you to address.
Exactly.
Okay, that's absolutely fine. As I said, it's up to the parties to decide how they're going to participate in the mediation, and so I understand that that's the decision that you and Mr. Chu have made.
Okay. Not to say that he is not going to be there and playing a role through me as an intermediary, because whatever decision comes about has to, in the end result, be his. It's the client who makes the call in the end analysis. But certainly, I'm here to guide him. I'm here to provide the value of my expertise in reaching that point.
Right. So he'll be present in the way that the two of you have decided, and participate in the way that the two of you have decided in terms of it's ultimately his decision as to how what the outcome will be, so to speak.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
So other than that, are there other questions that you have about the process or about our next steps?
Well, I know we've got the date, time, and location set down, so
Yes.
We're good in that regard. Do we know who's going to be present from the other side at this point for this?
Yes, Ms. McFarland, the owner of the daycare center, and her attorney, Ritu Gill.
Okay, so all right, so we've got Ms. McFarland, we've got her attorney present. Naturally, you're going to be there facilitating. Are there any time limits to this? What have we got as far as our ability to work between us to hammer this out?
Is there an amount of time that you would find helpful or useful? Usually check in with the parties about that and try to set some parameters around what they tell me.
She said basically it's whatever the parties determine. So, from our perspective, I would assume, if this, let me know if this doesn't meet with you, we're willing to give whatever time is necessary to get this over and done with. Certainly, we have a goal here, and if it takes putting in some additional time, fine. We're happy to do that to reach the end.
Okay, so it sounds like you are open-ended in terms of time, because your goal is to get this addressed and settled.
Exactly.
And however much time it'll take to do that.
Yeah.
So sometimes I also let parties know that we can set aside as much time as necessary, and then if they decide they want to take some time in between sessions to think over some of the things that have been said, or to look into any more information, that's an option as well.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, certainly, yeah, we can approach that as we see how we're proceeding through it as to whether we need additional time or an additional meeting or such like that. Hopefully we'll be able to, hopefully we'll be able to focus on what's going on here, and hopefully they'll be coming in willing to, look at things reasonably and, reach some sort of appropriate accommodation.
Okay, very good. Anything else that comes to mind?
Let's see. I think we've got the basic process down. Questions or thoughts that you have, Tom, at this point? No? All right. I think that covers the parameters as far as what we're doing well from our perspective. We look forward to seeing you at that point in time, and hopefully we'll have a session that's productive and reaches the ends that will serve everybody's interest.
Very good. I will see you at the mediation, and if you have any questions between now and then, please feel free to give me a call.
I will. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Hi, this is Ritu Gill on the line. I am the attorney for Miss McFarland, who is running the daycare center. And who am I speaking with?
This is Jody Miller. I am the mediator. It's nice to speak with you, Ms. Gill. Thanks for your call today.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for being available. Miss McFarland definitely has a lot of concerns, and this has gotten much more complicated and upsetting for her. But we've talked, and she would like to pursue mediation. So we're here to share with you whatever it is you need to learn from us. Ms. McFarland is with me, and what I suggest is I go ahead and put you on speakerphone so that we can both be involved with you and share with you our situation, and I'm sure Ms. McFarland would like to be part of that. So I'm going to go ahead and put you on speakerphone if that's okay.
Yes, that would be great.
Okay.
Hello, Ms. McFarland.
Yes, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. I'm Jody Miller. I'll be your mediator. And typically, before any mediation sessions, I always want to talk with the parties about the situation, what they'd like to see happen, explain how mediation works and how the way that I practice mediation may be similar or different to other mediation experiences you've had, Ms. Gill. So how would you like to begin? Would you like me to explain a mediation? Would you like to begin by telling me about the situation?
Well, we're happy to tell you what has occurred in our situation. And yes, we absolutely would like to learn the parameters of mediation and how you structure it. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to let Ms. McFarland share her thoughts as well. But essentially, this daycare center has been, as you may know from the forms we submitted to you, has been in operation since 2002. And what has occurred is some problems with the construction going back to the inception, with leakage in the floors, the wall, the ceiling, and a lack of accountability from the contractor. So we are at a point where a bit of damage has started to occur in the center that could lead to injury. And we've had to, it's simply not acceptable to have it in this condition when the small children are at the daycare center. So my client has incurred enormous costs to repair the damage. A lawsuit has been filed, and some initial discovery and document sharing has taken place. However, before we get too involved in the litigation, which is going to be very expensive, for all sides and time consuming really, Ms. McFarland, as I suggested, wanted to try mediation as a possible solution because she's really looking to communicate with the defendant. So that's where we are in the process, that we have filed the lawsuit. Should the mediation be successful, we may not pursue the claims. So we're here to give that a try. But she's not even been able to engage the contractor in a dialogue. And before we go to the legal process, we're here to see if we can at least get him to the table, engage him in a dialogue, share with him what the costs are, what has occurred in the damage, and see if we can work something out.
Jody, just to emphasize a couple things my attorney has said, he talks about the lack of accountability, the inability to get into a dialogue. I mean, one of the things that I want from this mediation is an opportunity to be in a room with this person where they can't just walk away, where they don't have a receptionist who's not taking phone calls or messages, where they can't just put me off. And that's really key. If we can't get that out of this mediation, then I don't see the point. I'd rather have my attorney, just bring claims.
So for you, Ms. McFarland, you're saying that you really want to have a dialogue with the other party, and that's one of your key points in having this mediation.
I'd like to see him take some responsibility for something.
Mm-hmm. That he takes responsibility. You mentioned he's had a lack of accountability, and that you really want to see him in the room where he can't just walk out and walk away and not respond or not listen to what it is that you have to say about this experience.
Absolutely. My attorney is more than competent to handle, the facts of the case and the law and how these things work. But, there's so much more going on here in terms of reputation in the community, what he's done to my life's work, and his just complete ignoring of his own responsibilities. I want a chance to say something about those things.
Mm-hmm. So you're really talking about your reputation now. Your attorney is more than competent in handling the legal pieces of this case, but you really want to have the opportunity to explain to him how this has affected your reputation. The effect that it's had on your...
Children have been harmed in my care. Mm-hmm. I can't even begin to tell you. I'm an educator, and people are... for a while I was afraid I was going to be sued because of what this person did. I mean, I want a chance. I want to see him tell me that that's not meaningful, that he doesn't care about that, because that's the way he's been behaving.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So really having the opportunity to tell him that children have been harmed in your care, you're an educator, and that's hugely impacted your life, and you really want him to understand that impact. It's very upsetting. You said it's affected your reputation, and you want this opportunity for him to be in the room so that he can understand that, he can hear that, and that you're hoping he takes responsibility for that.
Absolutely.
And I'll also interject, Ms. Miller, because my client's main responsibility is the care for these children, she does not want to spend her time, and I can understand this even though I am an attorney, she does not want to spend her time in litigation or in court unnecessarily. It will take her away from her main responsibilities, mm-hmm. which is the care of the children. So that's another reason why I support Ms. McFarland's choice and decision to try mediation.
Mm-hmm. So, Ms. Gill, from your point of view, although you are an attorney, you understand that your client wants to spend her time on her work as an educator, and that this is taking time away from that. If you have to go to litigation, that will also take time away from her work. And that's why you're supporting the mediation session as a way to address this.
That's exactly right. Mm-hmm. Time and expense has already been expended just to repair the building, much less to, pursue a lawsuit, which I definitely appreciate. I've also, as an attorney in the past, have participated in cases where they have gone the mediation route, some successful and some not successful. So I know that it can be a possible path to resolving issues. Mm-hmm. And I'm interested to learn more about, as you alluded to earlier, how you do your mediations and what the parameters for that, how it will be conducted and so on and so forth.
Yeah, because, one of the things that, while it is true I want him in the room and I do want to give him a piece of my mind and sort of see if he has any response, there is money involved here. This is $1 million. This is cost to put children in other places to keep them safe. This is, so I want to see some cash on the table come out of this too. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So for you, Ms. McFarland, it is about the children, it is about the time, but there's $1 million involved here, and so it is about the cash for you as well.
Exactly.
Would this be a good time now for me to explain how mediation works?
Yes, I think
okay.
so.
So my role will be to facilitate the conversation that you all choose to have. And you all meaning you, your client, Mr. Haskins, Mr. Chu, in the way that you decide you want to have that conversation. What you decide to talk about, how you decide to talk about it, when you decide to talk about things, is all of those decisions are up to you. My role is really to help you have that conversation and get clear about things, understand the perspective of the other whenever possible, make decisions, and all of those decisions are yours. I've heard you, Ms. McFarland, really talk about your reputation, children getting hurt, $1 million being on the table. So you'll have the opportunity to talk about any and all of those things to whatever degree that you want. What's maybe different about this mediation than other mediations you've been involved with, Ms. Gill, is that I won't be providing a very structured process or a structured process at all. It's going to really follow the conversation that you, Ms. McFarland, and the other parties have to come to an understanding, to get clear about things, to make decisions. So certainly if you're deciding that you want to talk about, and make decisions about the $1 million, you can do that. There are lots of decisions that people make as a result of mediation, but a key difference here is that I won't be structuring a process that moves you to settlement. My role will really be to facilitate the conversation that you have and help all of you have that in the most constructive way.
Okay, that's interesting to learn. Some of the past mediations I have been involved with, the mediator has taken a rather active role and has really, prodded the parties to come to a resolution or even suggested one. Will you be doing that in this process?
I will not. I will not be suggesting solutions. I will not be prodding you to come to solutions. That said, if you are talking about solutions and that's what you want to talk about, I'm going to help facilitate that as well. Meaning that if you're moving toward understandings or decisions around the money or around anything else, I'm going to help all of you have that conversation in the most productive way. So sometimes what happens in mediation as well is people may have strong feelings, may have strong emotions, and that may come out. My role will be to really support the conversation around those emotions, to support that feeling rather than to suppress them. And we find that this really does help people talk about what's going on for them to whatever degree they wish to.
Okay, now I have a follow-up question.
Mm-hmm.
I'm here to support, our situation. However, I do want to protect the daycare center should the mediation not work and should we need to pursue claims. So if at any time I feel that the dialogue is entering an area that I may need to request that we take a break and then I talk with my client, is that appropriate or acceptable?
Absolutely.
Okay.
You are free to take a break at any point, to confer with your client. And I'll talk about that at the beginning of the mediation as well, that sometimes we meet with parties and their attorneys separately. You can ask for that. I might suggest that at some point. You can ask for a break or an opportunity to confer with your client at any point. This is really your process, and my role is to facilitate that process and support it.
All right, and my final question is, we have a lengthy documentation of the history of the facility going back to 2002, including invoices, repairs, that sort of thing. Would you like to see that documentation prior to the mediation? Is that something that you do, or should we bring it? We will have it with us, but I'm not sure how involved you are in reviewing the history.
You're certainly welcome to send those things to me. However, I will not be utilizing them in any way. So it sounds like you have this documentation, you plan to bring it with you, and perhaps will utilize it with with the other parties. So just so that you know, there's not much that I can do with that documentation. Pretty much I'm going by what it is that you're telling me is the situation, and that's what I'm going to facilitate in any way that you wish it.
Have we given that to the lawyers and on Tom's side of this? Do they have it?
Yes, they do. They do. They have it as well because it's been submitted to them.
Okay. So we might be able to set it out on the table and go through it with them or so on if we thought it was taking us somewhere.
Yes, if we wish to share, I think we will want to share with them the costs that you've incurred, absolutely, and show them the invoices.
And is that what you see as part of Jody, as part of the mediation too? I mean,
That's one of the decisions that you and Ms. Gill will make, is to whether or not you want to share information. It sounds like you're talking about that now, whether or not to do that. And that'll be up to you at the time of the session. I won't prompt you to share that. Really, I will be following your lead.
Okay, well, those are primarily the questions that you've answered for me. So we would like to give it a try. If you need any more information from us, you've got my contact information, so please feel free to contact me as Ms. McFarland's attorney, and we will go forward then.
Okay, and I just wanted to check in with you about one other thing, is how long, which is typically what I do with all parties, how long of a session would you like to have? Did you want to go as long as it takes? Did you see this being a few hours?
My suggestion, and I'll speak with Ms. McFarland about this, but I don't think it should be indefinite or unlimited. I mean, at some point, it's either going to be productive or it's not. Mm-hmm. So, I'll check with Ms. McFarland, but I would suggest, a few hours. Let's see what happens in a few hours.
I think, I'd like to be in a place where I agree, a few hours. I mean, I don't want to be there forever, but on the other hand, I also don't want to have to stand up and have the room booked by somebody else when we're about ready to reach a conclusion or something. So I guess I kind of like to have some fudge time on the end of that couple hours, so for signing papers we can get it done. I mean, I'd really like to get this in, behind me and get on with my life and the work I'm supposed to be doing.
So, Ms. McFarland, for you, it sounds like, a few hours sounds okay. At the same time, you don't want to be constrained to a few hours. You'd like to get this done and don't want to have somebody else coming in the door after 3 hours. So you'd like a little flexibility.
Definitely. I don't know. When we first were working with Tom, he was very accessible and really, I thought it was a very good working relationship. And now I can't get him to talk to me at all. And so I could foresee spending a certain period in this mediation where nothing is happening while he decides whether or not he's going to participate. And so I want to have some background time to make up for that.
Okay, and so because of the way things have gone, where he's been, you haven't been able to reach him, he's been inaccessible, you don't know how long that's going to take for him to become involved in the mediation session. You'd like to have that time to do that.
Right.
Okay. And I do note, Ms. Gill, that you've also said that, a few hours for you, you want to see this be productive. That's important to you.
Yeah, I mean, I don't expect an arbitrary cutoff that, 2 hours exactly, we just stop. But I don't think it should be unlimited either. I mean, we're here to have, her talk to him directly, which is really what my client has been wanting to do. Mm-hmm. But if it's going nowhere, then we're going to have to look at other options.
Okay, and so that would be something I would check in with all of you at the beginning of the mediation session about time limit, what you'd like to see happen with that, just to get clear about what people's expectations are and what they would like to do.
That'd be fine.
Okay, very good. So if there are any other questions that you have between now and the time of the mediation session, please feel free to give me a call. And I look forward to meeting you at the mediation.